Many thanks for joining us on the maiden edition of the program Governance and Development Conversation, proudly brought to you by African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, ANEJ. In today's program, our focus will be on open governance. Our guest today is the Executive Director, African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, Reverend David Ogolo. Reverend Ogolo, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Mr. Duke.
Interestingly, we're talking about 30 years of ANEJ. How has the journey been for you? What were those things that inspired the foundation of ANEJ? And what is this program, Governance and Development Conversation, all about?
Thank you, Mr. Duke. Coincidentally, you've been there all this time. You remember when we also started the Niger Delta Issues and Answer. For the past 30 years, I will say that we've had the opportunity to contribute to the whole debate around strengthening democracy in Nigeria, providing policy reform, advocacy, engaging government at different levels, from local, states to federal level, internationally. We have also supported a lot of global initiatives, particularly aimed at addressing fundamental issues around natural resources, like a country like Nigeria, where oil plays a major role in the source of their income. And I recall, I can still recall now when Tony Blair invited us for the launching of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, EITI, in London. And just looking back, and also looking back at the campaign to get Nigerian Debt Council along with other indebted countries across Africa and globally, and looking at the role ANEJ played in the Jubilee campaign that led to debt cancellations of most African countries, I see, and then interestingly tying it to the whole campaign to get Nigerian money stolen, stashed in Western banks to be repatriated back, and finding those resources, using it to finance poverty alleviations and cash transfer program that benefited over 1 million Nigerians across the country, is something that is very reflective. And looking back now, I feel very excited with me and my colleagues and our board who have made this journey a rosy one.
In this past year, what would you say were the major hurdles, major challenges to these mandates, so to speak?
You know, raising resources to finance some of these things is not an easy one. And I say that one of the key lessons is that we've majorly raised our resources from overseas, from foreign donors, foreign foundations, and now we're beginning to see the need for us to think inward and begin to reflect back to say that, look, those who benefit from what we're doing should also be part of the whole fund raising to help demonstrate ownership and also raise the awareness that, you see, the corridor to freedom is narrow until we begin to build the capacity and move away from cynicism. The corridor is shrinking and it becomes difficult to create liberty. It's difficult for people to have say in their governance. And the few elite who have mastered the technique of excluding the people will continue to survive and continue to succeed. And then the people becomes a victim of such a process. And for us to continue to increase the debate where people's voice will count and trust can be increased, then the work of ANEJ is really required. And that's why we think that launching this new program, building from the success and lessons from the Niger Delta Issues as Answer, and over 3 decades of work on governance and transparency and development issue, both locally and internationally, it will help again put on the top agenda the role of transparency and accountability and equitable development.
Well said, well said. Congratulations once again.
Thank you very much, Duke.
Okay, in today's program, which of course is the maiden edition of Governance and Development Conversation, proudly brought to you by ANEJ, we're looking at open government, looking at specifically on the practice and the challenges. What is open governance? It's the concept that citizens have rights to access to information and participation. Governments have in place the institutions and policies to advance promoting transparency, accountability, and participation. and the appropriate tools and investments are made to enable these policies. Through open governments, citizens are ensured an enabling environment for participation. Citizen participation in public policies and processes means citizens can hold their authorities to account, denounce institutions and instances of malfeasance, and sanction elected officials, all key to fighting corruption. In the past years, many countries have recognized the importance of open governance in strengthening democracy, curbing corruption, and promoting better development. If citizens do not know how decisions are made, how taxes are spent, or who is responsible within government, citizens cannot ensure governments are working for their benefit. Okay, let's go back to the studio and engage our guest here today on the program, the executive producer of this program, Reverend David Ogolo. Share with us the principles and practices of open governance. How workable, how feasible, what are the challenges towards ensuring an open government practice in Nigeria?
Well, thank you very much. I think, technically speaking, we've got a constitution. And if you look at the constitution, it empowers the citizens to have freedom. And tied to freedom, there are quite a number of rights. We have the political rights, we have economic rights. And within this framework, there are the principle of people need a government that respond to their need. And if government must operate with legitimacy, they must be seen to provide opportunity for citizens to engage. And that process of engagement, you hear from the citizens, and you use the citizens' feedback to improve on governance. But unfortunately, in practice, this has become a challenge in Nigeria. And that's why you see that the young men and women are responding in a massive campaign. I'm sure that you're familiar with the End Bad Governance campaign across the country, the End SARS campaign. These are some way of demonstrating, of raising awareness about the poor practice of good governance and open government. And fundamentally, people have fundamental right to access to information. But you know, access to information in Nigeria is a really huge problem. If you look, a classical example is the transition that we have just experienced in Edo State from one government of PDP to a government of APC. And if you look, the transition committee that was set up, the bone of contention was lack of trust and lack of open government. And so that, again, demonstrates the tension that you see in the transition from one government to another government. And if you look the content of all the report that has been coming out since this new government came to power, it has also been largely tied around the lack of open governance. And so if you want to have an open government, you need to put in place system, rules, principle that will empower the ordinary citizens to fundamentally have access to governance. And key things that has been coming out with this whole report is about what was the debt that was incurred by the previous government. That information should be available to citizens by just going to the website. But all these informations are not available. There are one audit of the state. The audit report should be accessible to the citizens, but all these are not available. And then the legislative process needs to be transparent and accountable. Unfortunately, the legislative process is not as open and transparent and accessible to the citizens. So because of all this challenge, there's poor governance. And if you look the literature on governance, country where you see that the indices are not doing well, for example, open government is not there, trust is low, there's no way you can guarantee development. So you can see that good governance is tied to development. And when you look at the countries around the world, you say, why are some countries developing and some are not developing? You will agree with me completely that poor governance is a major contributor. Then corruption, and then lack of access to information, voices not being heard. Because once you don't allow the people voice to count in what government do, then you are closing the corridor of development. And that's the reason why we are appealing to government to fundamentally create the enabling environment for people to be able to engage. But unfortunately, as you know, the elite in the country and found governance as an opportunity to increase their stomach infrastructure. And that, unfortunately, they see the opportunity for citizens to engage as threatening to that stomach infrastructure building. And so what we are appealing to our people is that, look, just reflecting in the last 30 years of engaging in governance and transparency work in Nigeria, is that no government, either at the local government level or at the state level, that will ever open the space for you to engage. You have to rise up to the challenge to engage. Government must see that there is the right of the citizens to demand open government. And for open government to happen, the corridor to that open government is narrow. Okay. And to expand it, people must engage. And that's exactly the whole basis of our launching this new program. Okay. To engage, to tell people, don't be cynical. Okay. Don't say, no, we don't trust them, they have taken decision. No, you have to rise up to the challenge. The people, you want a better society. In America, you try to make references to America, to Europe. The people are working towards a better governance. They're working towards a better open government. In Nigeria, our people are so docile. Our people don't talk. Our people don't engage. They just think that the government is there for them. The government is there for themselves. The elite of the country are there for themselves. They are in business. They are not there in the business to help the common man. Okay. And so for us, as society, civil society, stakeholders like media, we must come together to continue to open the corridor to freedom, because the corridor to freedom is shrinking and civic space is shrinking, and the society, the elite in the country are taking advantage of this shrinking position to amass wealth. And now the funny thing is that when you amass wealth in such an environment, it doesn't contribute to development. Because when you take money you can't never be able to use, it's not going to be productive. Yeah. And that's the real pain that we go through in the country.
If you just joined us, you're on to Governance and Development Conversation, courtesy African Network for Environment and Economic Justice, an Edge, with support from international organizations. Today's program, our focus is on open government, principles and practice. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have more conversations coming to you on the program. Stay with us. Many thanks again for rejoining us on the program. A while ago, we started our conversation on open government principles and practice, looking at how government can be held accountable by operating an open system where transparency, accountability will be the order of the day. But we know that in this part of the world, that's certainly a very tall order. So, Reverend Golo, people say that part of the challenge why the citizens are unable to hold those in position of authority accountable is because they've been pauperized. They've been brought into a state of abject poverty. So their capacity to engage is really not there. They are more concerned about what to eat, what to drink, and less interested in what government is doing, even though that's at their detriment.
Yes, I completely agree that this patron-client culture that has been created in Nigeria that makes millions of Nigerians live in poverty, and then few less than 1% of elites are controlling the entire economy, and they use that as a tool. And that even to the extent, they have now also built it in a way that because of this level of poverty, people are no longer interested in governance. And during election time, when people are supposed to use their voters card to decide the fortune of any government that misbehaved, they are not able to participate. And so because of this, like I said earlier on, the corridor to freedom, to liberty, to good governance is shrinking. But to be able to continue to expand that corridor to freedom, to liberty, to development, we must rise up to widen that space. That corridor must be expanded, and to it to be expanded, then our role as civil society must continue. We must speak truth to power. We must be able to engage these few elites who thinks that it is their own time, that they must be the one to decide our future. And the future they decide is a future that do not give us hope to grow the economy. And this is even easier in a petroleum-driven economy like Nigeria. Because if you look, most of the states today, they don't really run by taxes of the people. They are run by the natural resource revenue that is coming monthly allocation. And so it's easier for few political elite, less than 3% of the entire country, to gang up with the multinational oil company to steal the revenue and use it for something that doesn't meet their development goal. But enough of lamentation. We can't continue to lament and continue to make references to countries and jurisdictions that are doing well. Those people where they are doing well in America and London, some of these countries I've visited, by my virtue, they are not more intellectually sound than us. What is the problem is that we must begin to understand that if you need freedom, you must rise up. If you need liberty, you must rise up. You cannot stay in your house of comfort and think one man is going to make you open government. No. No governor, no president, no member of National Assembly. They are there for themselves. We, the people that are victims of this poor governance, we have to rise up. We have to build consciousness. We have to build awareness. We have to raise people's awareness and say, it's our right to speak truth to power by educating the people. And so when you have a governor, when you have a president telling you, I've built road for you, damn it. It's our money, it's our resources. It's not the governor's money. It's not the president's money. It's not the parliamentarians' money. It is the people of Nigeria that holds this money. The country belongs to all of us. And because we are increasingly becoming very docile, we are not able to speak truth to power, and increasingly our elites are beginning to build forces around themselves and create a patron-client system. And what does that mean in a system like Nigeria? You cannot become anything in Nigeria except you are subservient to these characters. And that's why you see that people with questionable certificate, people with questionable history, people without record are beginning increasingly, and people with dubious history are beginning to go into governance. And this is very threatening for our own economy. And the economy is not growing, and the economy is not doing well, and we are all victims. So is it just enough to lament? No. Is it not enough to distrust the system? No. Can we move forward? Yes. Are there opportunities to engage? Yes. And we are engaging. And there are results for it. So the end governance campaign in the country sent a signal to the government. That is how to go. And that is the best way to move forward. Because otherwise, if we continue to lay emphasis of saying, oh, they have done it, we don't think that there will be any result. That's not the way. That's why we have launched this program, educate the public. And one of the fundamental things we have done in Edo State is raising awareness about open government partnership. And the government must be able to provide a framework to build confidence in the system, because the legitimacy of any government is the amount of engagement and the policies you put in place. For instance, the government needs to put an open, transparent procurement system in place. For example, the government needs to put in place things that will create confidence in the system. When citizens blow whistle, they should be protected. When civil servants are in the ministry, they see things that is not acceptable, they can be protected against any victimization. And once you put such systems in place, you strengthen the governance integrity system. And that is the kind of integrity framework we want to be put in place in Edo State.
How do you describe the impact of the Freedom of Information Act in terms of open government partnership?
I give you a classical example. In those days, when Desiane was the petroleum minister, I remember we took her to court because we felt that she wasn't qualified to be the petroleum minister because she didn't went for her youth service. And there are some certain things we felt that there was an integrity question about her credibility. And we went to court. But you know, because they were empowered then, they threw up this case out and and claim that he won. But you can see what has ended today. Just last month now, the U.S. government have repatriated over $52 million from Desiani to Nigeria. So, you see, it was a red flag. So, the issue of FOI, Freedom of Information Bill, or Act, or framework that we encourage government to put in place, it helps strengthen the integrity system. Once you put in the right policy in government, then people will be warned not to, because once you allow citizens to have access to information, it creates confidence, it creates trust. And one of the ways to undermine democracy is when people don't trust those in power. And you'll agree with me that if you carry out measurement of trust in Nigeria today, people are very cynical about government. And the legitimacy of any government is about the trust that people have on the government. And today, people no longer trust government. And this trust problem can crumble a government. And that's why we are appealing, put in place an integrity framework. And one of those integrity elements that can be put in place is the Freedom of Information law. And some states try to put these laws in practice, like Ekiti State. But in Edo State, we don't have such a law. And that's why you can see that during the transition from PDP to APC, just to exchange documents about how the government was run became a difficult problem. It becomes a difficult problem. It could have been easy if the framework was put in place. But this problem cannot put in place. So all the exchange of you did this or you did not do this was as a result of lack of policies and principles that will strengthen integrity framework, strengthen the freedom for access to information. That was the problem. That is the problem. It's not about whether this government is PDP or the government is APC. What we are advocating for, have a framework that will strengthen trust, confidence, that will enable the citizens to have access to information, that will empower the citizens to blow whistle when things are not done properly. If you don't do that, there is a consequence. And the consequence is what we saw when PDP was transitioning to APC and the exchange. And you can see, and what also was the problem is that it was also a gap of policy. Edo State should learn from it. What are the lessons from it? We need to put laws in place to say that if government A is transitioning to government B, this is the fundamental report. And this is a framework and standard that it must comply with. And when that is put in place, the reason why you put in all this in place is to strengthen governance, is to decrease crisis and tension. Because when there is crisis, there is tension, it doesn't help development. And you take, for instance, if you look the tension currently that the government is investing their time in, they could have invested in things that will help grow the economy. I was just imagining the other day that, look the South-South, look the political elite from the South-South. You could imagine if they come together and work together. And that's the recent book written by Professor Dusil. He's talking about the gambling of development. That one way of ensuring development in a society is for the elite to have a bargaining, to agree that in principle we must build a consensus. And if you look countries like China, you look countries like Singapore, they've come to understand that even though we have disagree, we must all have a common agenda for development. And that if we don't do that, you can't. You can see River State, you can see the crisis. Because of the crisis between Wike and the current governor, there is no way federal presence will be felt there. The same thing applicable to all the South-South states. And unfortunately, this is the region that produces the oil with which they run the country. And you can see Lagos is going. Because nobody waits for you. As the political elite in the South-South, in Niger Delta are fighting over small pie. Over small pie. Lagos is moving. Because nobody waits for you. Nobody waits for you. Abuja is going. And so the few little pie that is coming to this region, they are fighting over it. And as we speak today, the first time in history, in the last few years, you can see now from Benin to Calabar, there's no good road. And if you recall, when we were doing our Niger Delta issues and answer, it tells you, you can go to Warri and come back and still meet our program. But today, if you want to go to Warri, you must wake up by 5:30. Otherwise, you will not see Warri. And otherwise, you are stuck in Warri. We'll
take another break. When we return, it will be time to call it a wrap on the program. Hashtag GDC, Governance and Development Conversation, brought to you by Anich. Stay with us. Many thanks again for staying with us on the program. As we conclude the program, we'll take a look at the parting shots. This is about the citizens.
Yes.
This is about
empowering the citizens.
Empowering the citizens.
Yes.
So what are those critical steps the citizens can take to engender open government, open governance, access to information, transparency, and accountability? What is most popular would be, the citizens mobilize, engage in protests, like you referenced several times, the hashtag NSAS, yes, and End Bad Governance.
That's just one tool.
So what are the other tools?
Well,
quickly.
The political party, we encourage people to join the political party. The political parties in Nigeria is just a private entity owned by elite, because people don't participate in political parties. Go to your local government, go to your ward, join political party. Be a voice to be recognized. And then also the lecturers, the university dons, they should help increase research that will be available to unpack where there are poor governance. And they can share best practice, how those challenges can be tackled. And one of the key things to do in any government is to engage the government as well. You know, one of the things that makes a government to respond is the threat of knowing fully the consequence. But if the people don't mobilize and raise an awareness, the government will be seen to be the one reflecting the position of the people.
Okay.
So people must speak out and speak truth to power.
All right, time flies. I mean, when you're having a great time such as this, Reverend Golo, many thanks.
Thank you,
for bringing this to ITV. And this is a partnership that works. I mean, it's been there over the years, and we reignited it. Well, just to let you know that you can always get back to us on this program by way of feedback, to ask questions or contribute to the program. And these are the feedback channels, anhnigeria@gmail.com. Send an email to that, or you can use the WhatsApp number 081-87674-339. On Facebook, facebook.com/AnEdgeNigeria, on Twitter @AnEdgeNigeria, on YouTube @AnEdgeNigeria 9347. And that's our package today. Hope to see you next week, Monday, at exactly 5:30 on a program, Governance and Development Conversation, powered by ANEDGE. Have a great evening. Bye for now.